Hey guys, good morning, and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. I have Mark Venti joining me as well today. He has a white shirt on, so we are prepared for business today. Business and pleasure, we should say, a mix of both.
Yeah,
How are
it's
you,
it's
Mark?
summertime. You got to get the white shirt on, everybody. It's good to see you all starting to pop in. And please share, as many you already have, where you're coming from. I got to give one specific shout out because it's personal. I saw Access Church from Lakeland in here. My son is moving to Lakeland in 3 weeks to go
Hey,
to SEU, and we'll be down the road from you guys in a few weeks. So welcome everybody. JC, I'm saying I'm hollering out at you.
that's awesome. And if you guys, just so you know, we are using Livestorm. This platform is similar to Zoom, but what you guys can see is so Mark and I are basically on stage, if you want to call it that. And then so you guys know, there's no secret, seeing you guys on camera. You're off camera, so you can just jump in the chat, and we'd love you to engage that way. And then as we go throughout the workshop, we can also invite you guys onto the stage to chat as well. So it's a really, really great platform for us to use today.
Chris, good to see you. Morristown. I guess I'm seeing your chat comment. We've got Atlanta in the house, Pennsylvania in the house. So good to have you all here.
Open.
We're gonna have a great time. I'm serious, guys. You're about to hear from Mike, and this will be one of the most tactical, practical, and highly equipping workshops we've done yet. And the other ones have been fantastic, but I'm really excited for you to see the content Mike has put together. It's going to be great. Nathan, Ayers Church, good to see you again. Digital. We've got Dan from also from Pennsylvania. Good to have you all here.
That's awesome. I had a coffee with Nathan the other day. He's a mover and a shaker, that guy. He knows
Yeah,
what he's doing. Yeah.
that's fun.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Amazing.
Well, we're so glad to have everybody here. Part of our game plan as we dive in here in just a few minutes, and if you're familiar with the workshops that we do weekly, I guess we're almost weekly. We've been weekly the last few weeks. We're working towards that. Is that please put questions and comments in at any point. We typically wait for questions at the end, but today, just because there's so much rich content, basically each section that Mike is going to be covering, we're going to take a moment to pause and go over questions. So please post your questions as we go in. I'll do my best to send them over to the genius Mike, and have a great dialogue. So we're really glad you all joined. We're gonna have a good time.
Awesome. And just do a quick introduction for you guys to give us, if you haven't met us already, a bit of background. So my background is I've just joined Overflow actually 3 months in now. Previous to that, for 11 years, I was the CFO at Fount NYC in New York. And so had the opportunity to be a part of, from the early days, or I should say the original days, the very start, all the way through to a 10-year journey with the church, 5 locations, 2 internationally and one in Paris and one in Berlin. And so really that was an exciting opportunity for me because I was also one of Overflow's first customers. So I've sat in the seat of a CFO, operations, HR, church management, and also as an Overflow customer. And then I'm here really to engage you guys with thought leadership, concepts, high level understanding of church financial management and leadership. And then so I'm really the numbers guy. And then introing Mark, Mark will make everything look and sound amazing. Mark.
I don't know about that, but yeah, Mike and I have been become good friends over this last year. Starting off, actually, when I first started launching Generosity University with Overflow, Mike was one of the first people I talked to try to talk about launching Gen U at Fount. That's how we originally met. But I also have sat on executive leadership at a great local church for. I was in the executive team for 11 years at a church called Church Home. And my role there was to oversee our pastors and ministries. So Mike and I are kind of functioning like executive team members from our different hats, him doing more of the operations and finance and me overseeing ministry. And we're going to try to kind of dialogue in that format, because it takes a great partnership to do what we all do in church. And want to talk about how important what Mike is going to be delivering to us today is for the whole church, and also how we can work directly when it comes to working with people and translating that to the incredible ministries that we all want to lead, and how we can work together as partners to create an incredible financial future for your church or for your nonprofit organization. So it's going to be great. Mike, why don't we
Brilliant.
jump in?
Jump in. Fantastic. Okay, so just to frame up the conversation, so today we're going to delve into church financial management when we look at numbers. So, how do we present numbers? What does it look like for us to do that, both from a trust and transparency perspective, and also look at some really great insights into? We're going to specifically look at water flow graphs, we're going to look at spark lines, and we're also going to delve into some examples from um, best practices around presenting data. So this is exciting. There's going to be a lot of content, very heavy in terms of examples and application. And then just so you guys know as well, all of the slides that I'm presenting, you will be sent an email following this workshop with all of this. So if we're going through it and you're taking notes, and there's certain points you want to go back over, don't worry, you'll get a copy of this as well.
Mike's
So just a
delivering us some filet mignon today, guys. He's prepared
yeah.
an incredible summer barbecue meal for us. So it's going to be great.
Steak. We're ready to eat.
Yeah, yeah,
Perfect.
let's
Okay,
go.
so love this. So this is just to set us up. Bill Cox, the CEO, founder of Marta Solutions, just says this: transparency is deeply rooted in the concept of stewardship. So as leaders and members of the church, we're entrusted with more than just resource. We're stewards of responsibility and the spiritual well-being of our community. This sacred trust calls us to lead with integrity, clarity, and humility. Now here's the great gold in this. Transparency doesn't mean sharing every detail. It means cultivating a posture of openness and accountability, two key words. When we understand that our actions are always before God, we realize that transparency is not just a best practice, it's a spiritual mandate. So, with that in mind, let's have a look at how we understand impact through our numbers. So real impact inspires real generosity. A study that Fidelity recently did that found 64% of people would say that they would give more if they knew the impact of their gifts. And really, this is where our generation, or I want to call it our generation, I'm 42, but the next generation really is looking for information that is both applicable, accountable, and high level trust, high level transparency. And I think as churches and also nonprofits, we're constantly in this tug of war between what do we present versus what is applicable versus how we perceived. So that's the kind of triangle of this conversation. Trust builds transparency. So, sorry, transparency builds trust. So, are we clear and open with our financial information? And do our members know how their contributions are being used? A high level, thought around this is just how and when do our church members first get access to our financial information, or as a nonprofit, when is it the first touch point? And I think a lot of us are starting to realize that our members don't necessarily want to ask for the information. They want to be presented with the information earlier and ahead of that ask. So at my previous role with Fountain NYC, as an example, we actually moved all of our transparency financial information and we front loaded it. So at our new Christians, you might call it new Christians, or your onboarding as a church member, was when we first introduced our members to our church, to our financials. And the feedback we got from that was amazing, because it was no longer the question of where am I going? How do I ask for this? It may be an awkward question, it may not be. I've already been presented with it and it's available for me. And from that, our giving and engagement was a lot higher because we had already built that trust and transparency up front. So that was a big win for us.
Can
I'll
I
pause it
can
there,
I
Mark.
double
Yeah.
down on that, Mike, for a second? Because we all know that in the culture in which we live in, trust is actually kind of at an all-time low. trust with not just the church in general, but nonprofit organizations? Are people mismanaging money? And so, what you're saying here is if trust is low, we can actually be intentional to elevate trust by just being more transparent and vulnerable, right? Like, this is actually a lever we can pull if we're facing a lack of trust to go, hey, let's be intentional so that trust can grow.
Yep, 100%, exactly. And I think that's the tension that we think as church leaders, or especially on the executive team, is how much do we share, which does build the trust, versus how much are we exposing ourselves. And I would encourage everyone to share more than what you'd probably think
Mm,
is
that's good.
applicable, which is where what really helped us win these steps. So here's the big one. Don't hide behind percentages. So a lot of us are very used to sharing percentages when we come to sharing financial information, but we really need to share numbers. So what was given, how was it used, and the lives touched. And really here we're thinking through the transparency as a form of stewardship. So let's obviously be found to be trustworthy. And out of that trustworthy, that's how people entrust us. So when we look at our high level key givers, kingdom builders, at that next, as we work through our tiers of giving, they have to see a high level of transparency and trust. But the reason we give them that is through the numbers, not just the percentages. So they're not trying to work out the
Sounds good.
numbers, they can clearly see what we're doing. Peter Ducker says, what is your communication plan to share results and impact metrics regularly? If you can't measure it, you can't manage it. And I think a lot of us know this around, our personal lives, but we really need to show the return on investment as a kingdom impact for our numbers, so people can really understand, hey, at the end of the day, I was part of this journey. This is what we gave, this is how much we gave, and this is the impact we saw through that giving and the impact we got at that level. This is some guiding principles that I've used a lot when we talk about financial information. Craig Groeschel explains 3 keys to communication at all levels of generosity. So what do I want them to know? So how does their giving fuel ministry and change lives? So this is both, at a local level, global level, but also, know. So the knowing side is the information. Then how do you feel about it? So not only is it the numbers, it's the stories, the inspired value, the connection, the videos, the media. And then what do you want them to do, or the call of action? So at every point, the givers are moving on a journey through that generosity levels. And if you don't speak to that audience at every interval, at every section, then they're not going to go to the next point. So for example, if we take a first time giver, what do you want them to know? Well, they obviously are very inquisitive about church finance, the first time they've entered, first time they've engaged. So their no is a very high level of information to build trust. But they also need to feel it. They need to understand, hey, if I'm stepping into this church or this nonprofit for the first time, and I'm now part of this organization, what am I inspired by? What do you value? And how does my giving connect with that mission? And then lastly is, to that point with the first time giver, obviously I want to move from being first time giver to start my generosity journey into tithing, and then obviously above and beyond that 10%, which is how we make the real difference in our giving across our
I love
platforms.
how that's broken up, Mike. Like, so what I'm hearing you say is the way we show them what to know is through information, and what how do we help to make them feel is through storytelling, videos, photos, testimonies, and then do is having a clear call to action. So thinking of 3 ways of communication: knowledge, storytelling, and clear call to action is such a really simple, clear, actionable. And I just want to say one quick thing as a reminder to all of us here is please put any questions or comments. You can either put them in the chat or you can put them in the question area. I clearly don't have a problem interrupting Mike, so I'd love to interrupt him with your questions, and pull them in so we can have as much of a conversation as possible. I just want to say along these lines here briefly too is this leadership thought of weigh-in equals buy-in. So when people feel like they're a part of something, they're going to buy into it. So literally, like financially, when when they feel like they're part of the process. So thinking through at a big picture level, how do we communicate with transparency so it makes the individuals in our community feel like they're actually a part of the evolving process, and as a result of that, they're going to have ownership and want to buy into it. And so I think these three principles that you shared here are perfect. And again, it's always a great move to quote Pastor Craig Rochelle on anything when we talk
Hmm.
about strategy and infrastructure.
Brilliant. So just a high level overview of, we touched on this last month with our workshop, but just want to touch base back here again. So this is the generosity journey that we've identified at Overflow. So here you guys can see, obviously, every single giver is part of a step and they're going to a next step. So, we talked about the first time giver, but as they move to the next consistent giver or into the tithing, this is how we want our givers to make the transition through these steps. But also, at each point, this audience has a different message that needs to be communicated. So, not just presenting the information at, say, a first time givers level is very different to a kingdom builder. And that's why when we talk about percentages, numbers, graphs will go into examples, visuals. We're always thinking about these individuals through those lens. And as you can see, just to touch on, very briefly, we also have a whole lot of other resources we can help you guys with at Overflow. For example, TAP, our Generosity University, which Mark looks after, is education, insights, application to how these givers can be supported in financial management, all the way through to, pledges, non-cash, which is our not stock gifts as well. So it's a great insight, and really think through, as we communicate, how we can walk through these steps.
Mike, how have you seen using this you giver journey basically as a information tool for helping keep people growing in their journey of generosity? Like how church has applied this well to really be intentional about growing generosity.
Yeah, so I think this starts to give churches really good insight into actually where each of their giving tiers are. So when you're
That's
looking
good.
at your reporting, and it can be, through Overflow's example, it now gives you really great information into your report. So when you are looking at your first time givers report, now you start to value them not just as, oh, they gave a first time one-off gift. Now it's, these, I need to put these guys into a flow. How am I communicating with them? Who's going to follow up? Am I inviting them to Sunday services? Are they being invited to a group? What is their onboarding process now to engage them? And then from that, then we start to see over the coming months how that giver starts their journey and progresses. But it also gives us help with understanding other, I suppose, trickier conversations, which we are not good at, which is our at-risk givers. Is now we start to look at them and say, okay, yes, I understand they're going this way. If not at this point and they are at risk, how do I have those conversations to help bring that person back? Or what is it that we want to actually understand their pastoral conversation in their moment, in their life's journey?
So good. And there's so much we can pull out of this. Obviously, we can't even cover in today's workshop, but um, looking over this and applying this to your church is a great way to go. How can we, because we can't control people, that'd be nice, let's be honest, but we can influence them. And so being able to identify where people are at and where we want them to go, and then what are different levers we can pull to help influence these individuals to move on their journey is something we can be really strategic about. So this is so cool what you've built here, Mike.
Brilliant. Okay, so let's go into some examples. So thinking through these guys, the audience, the application of trust and transparency. So here's some examples, just to inspire you guys around how to present numbers well. This is from the Orchard Group. So these guys are a church planting organization. Love this concept here. So up the top here, we have high level metrics around engagement, number of people, percentage rates of success. Then we, if you want to call it this, like a, a journey along a pathway, then we go into year over year growth. So this is looking at reach and attendance as the churches grow. So again, Visually, you're seeing a metric which is up and to the right. And then lastly, just this is a very simple pie chart, but a great application of what we were talking about around percentages and numbers. And again, don't be afraid of the numbers that you guys have, whether you think they're small or large. Just having them there is really, really important for building outstanding trust and transparency with your givers. The next one,
Mike,
this
as
is
you
from,
as you dive
yes.
into this next example, no, go forward to VU Church. Laura had a great question in here about, do you still think don't hide behind percentages applies to large churches who have budgets that are 20 million plus? Like, here's an example of one.
Yeah.
Sometimes we think that if we share actual numbers, it might actually demotivate them to give, because how could $100 a week tithe make an impact on a budget so big? What are your thoughts about sharing these numbers, even with large budget churches?
Yeah, that's 100% this slide. So, yeah, I mean, like if Laura, looking at this example, this VU's at 22 million in income, 17 million in total income, 17 million in tithes. So I think people are used to big numbers. I think it gives people clarity. So at the end of the day, we're giving clarity, trust, and transparency. People are used to the Apples and the Googles and the everyone outside of our context within a business environment. So I think it actually shows a stewardship level that is actually even more important than what we would perceive as the numbers being too big. So it shows that yes, you are a part of this whole organization or entity, but your gift counts, and this is why it counts, and this is where it goes to. So on that, with this slide, this is an interesting, I haven't seen this before, but I love it. So VU are looking at taking this a step further when we look at actually presenting our budget numbers versus our actual as well and percentages here. So for example, with operations, you can see that the actual spend was under budget, but when it comes to savings and expansion, obviously here you've got over budget, which is good in this case. But I think this is great too because visually, some research has been done around bar charts and not pie charts. So a lot of us love pie charts, but bar charts as a psychological visual representations show progress, emphasizing momentum. And you can see that here because straight away our eyes are looking at, hey, yeah, well, that was below, still, big numbers relative to some organizations. But I can see that the stewardship of this is done well. None of this is surprising to me. I'm not looking at operations and thinking, wow, this is, out of proportion or a number that doesn't make sense to me, even when we, look at compensation. And all of this helps me as a giver make good decisions, but also be very, very clear and understand where the finances are going.
Sarah had another question to add to this, the last one, Mike. And I want to also add to the $100 gift is that even if a 20 plus $1 million budget um, is is a reality, which that's awesome. That just continues to make it more and more important to casting a big vision. And that way, every $100 counts, every $5 counts. And so, what you're trying to say is, hey, we might have a $20 million budget, but we actually have a $30 million vision. And being able to continue to communicate that out front in a partnership with transparency and vision is so vitally important. If the only thing we do is transparency, but we don't have a really clear, compelling vision, then we're leaving things on the table when it comes to inviting people to be part of this incredible journey. So, a specific question Sarah asked is, how is this communicated to the broader church? Is it only done via external comms like websites, or what are different ways, Mike, that you recommend?
Yeah, so everything you guys are seeing, this is all information that is external. So this is websites, freely available. I think when you communicate it to your church specifically, I think two forms of communication. You do it up front, like we talked about with the onboarding of new Christians, and then at least once a year, you're doing a generosity series, which again presents the numbers to the church as a whole. and then your budgets, and I suppose, forward thinking strategic planning, I would invite a high level kingdom builders, that tier into those conversations early, to start them to understand, hey, this is what the year looks like ahead, this is what we're budgeting, this is some decisions we're making. Because again, to Mark's point, the more buy-in, the the better it is. In our situation, the example, I've never had a situation where this has not proved to be successful in terms of how we've presented the numbers, either to the church, to the new Christians, and to the kingdom builders. I think people want it, they need it, and the more we do it, the just the the more it becomes best practice, just the easier it is to engage them, and to have those conversations up front.
It's so good. I love it. I love this next visual you're going to show too, which is a cool other way to show it.
Okay, so this is an interesting one. I've never seen this before, but I thought it was very creative. So this is from Irons Community Church, and here you go. You've got your dollar bill, looking at percentages for groups, admin, facilities, obviously all of the different ideas. I mean, like, this would be great even at a level which would, obviously, as we talked about, it'd be great to have numbers here, but it does show impact. It gives you a great, quick visual, and maybe for different groups. And, to Justin's point around demographics, there's different demographics that would find this interesting as well. Okay. So that wraps up the first section. Sorry, Mark, is there any other questions? That's
No, I do want to highlight Justin, who's an incredible CFO in Orlando. Justin Locke made a great comment about there's different levels of transparency and different levels of information, which I think you're going to get to in a minute when it comes to the broader public of the church. And then if you have some form of ministry like a kingdom builders, that's a way that you continue to create more weigh-in and buy-in from these high capacity givers, is giving them upfront information earlier. Not that you're holding stuff back, but Justin made a great comment, and he's a great person to meet, by the way. And he could definitely give you more insight too in how they do this as a church.
brilliant. Okay. So let's jump into next part. So we've got the second part now. I want to introduce you guys to some additional thoughts, like some thought leadership around presenting financial data. Now, this is more specific to probably internally at a board management executive level. So this is a waterfall chart. You may or may not have seen it, but we started to use this because it is brilliant when it comes to let's just say, we've got the numbers guy in the room, and we've also got the visual person in the room. It helps both. So the way this works is, on the far left, you'll see your tithes and offerings and other revenue, which is basically, for want of a better word, the water coming into the waterfall. So this is blue. So this is filling it up. So we have this high point, and then from the high point, we roll off our expenses, and all of these expenses are categorized obviously by the highest spend. So from the 357,000 that we are getting in, we're rolling these through, you can obviously read these here, but it's just a great visual, because straight away, if I'm looking at this, I can see, oh, wow, interesting. Our highest expense here is our staff and benefits. We flow down through venue operations into our ministry departments, finally with guest relations. And then at the bottom here is the result. So from the 357,000 that we did spend, and this could be an annual number, this could be a monthly number, depending on how you want to use some information. And then at the end of the day, hey, okay, so there's the 17,000. Really great quick management decisions. I'd love, as if you're reviewing this with your board or team, okay, let's review this, and this. This is higher. We could do look at side by sides. So it's just a really great representation, just to help kind of like frame this for you, just because it probably is new, and it's different from just a bar and line chart. It does tell a story. So you're really looking at this, just not the numbers, but the sequence. So as I explained, how money was received, how money was spent. It's intuitive for non-financial people. So, if you have, let's take some of the team members you have on your team, everyone could look at this, and it's very easy to explain as I just did, but also you can understand it. Um, Highlights key contributors. So if it's the expense categories are different to what I just shared, you can really clearly straight away articulate, hey, this department, this person, this amount of spent is part of this contribution, and it helps people understand it. So you could use this for events, men's, women's conferences, everything can show you, hey, this was our registration income. Out of that registration income, this is where we spent the money. So it focuses on movement, which I really like. So as we explain, it shows how one value becomes another, but also how each value transforms and can change over time. And this again bridges trust. So we've been talking about, the financial stewardship. It's very clear. The numbers are there, percentages are there, and it flows to understand well. This would be great for a kingdom builders presentation, because a lot of the guys in that room would have a reference to this graph, but also understand it. So it's really, really great. You could, if you're doing monthly updates with your team leads, all of the stuff to just help you bring some clarity there. So some examples just to help you use this in every day. So for example, we started the year with 100,000 in reserves. We received 500,000 in tithes and 200,000 in other giving. We invested 300,000 into staff, 120,000 into ministries. We gave 70,000 to local and global ministries. All these expenses up, we ended up with a 660,000 surplus. So that can help you like explain it. So if you want to put verbiage underneath the graph, so if someone's reading this, they can understand, great, this is how it was spent, this is where it went, application, impact, return on investment. So that's a waterfall chart. Just some quick tips. Use everyday language. A lot of us are used to this jargon around, say, personnel versus staff support or wages. Add footnotes, anything that would help, as we talked about, give you print, digital formats as well, so people can look at it, but also understand insight into those categories. And again, just more avoid those jargon like capex, which is less defined that people may not understand. With design, keep it the chart clean and spacious, so avoid overcrowding. Don't put massive headings with descriptions, just put the high level thought there. Use neutral colors for expenses. I use blue for income, but maybe you might like to use green or blue for income. And then the red is a deficit, if there is any. And then pair the chart, as we said, with one or two sentences in the footnotes explaining the additional categories. So the structure, again, you guys will get a copy of all this, but this is just helping frame it so you can really think through it. So you have the starting balance, if you want to include that. Add your tithes and offerings, your designated giving, other income. If you're a non-profit, obviously change these titles to how your income is brought in, minus your personnel, ministry programs, operations, outreach, capital expenditure, if you want to put that in there through any upgrades you have. This is also a great graph to use if you are in the middle of a building campaign, because you could ramp it up and say, hey guys, we need $1 million. If we receive $1 million as part of this capital raising campaign, the $1 million would flow out through these next 5, 6, 7 expense categories, and this is what it would look like for us. So just the numbers, just so again you can see them if you're not visually, so you can kind of pair these together. So this is the categories and the amount, and when you get the notes from this presentation, this will just help you. You can put in your own numbers and start to work through it. And for those who are very practical, don't worry. There's a resource tab here as well, a resource slide. So here's an example of all the scaffolds you can pull. This is an actual smart sheet that I found online. So again, these are just third-party templates, which are great. So we'll go into Sparklines next, but just want you to know that you do have all of these resources. So don't worry, you don't need to Google where and how to find it. And if you need help with this, if you're looking at some stuff you're doing and working through it, happy to be a resource to guide you and help you to really show impact this way.
These are so good, Mike. And do you see these primarily being something that you use for board conversations, executive conversations? Are these more for public consumption? How do you use these the most, when serving the church?
Yeah, I think so. We didn't use this publicly facing in my previous role. I think this will become a public face as people get more used to it. It's just going to take a bit of explaining, but definitely within the board, at a board level, executive team, and I would even say at a team leader role when you're presenting budgets to certain departments. This is just great to help people set it well, but then also follow up. So, if you want to look at budget versus actual as part of a next step, you could also include that into this to help you track as well. And at a board level, once board members get used to seeing this, they love it because it's very easy to track the year on year, month on month, and then people get excited about it because it's like, oh wow, yeah, okay, that's great. We did see this increase, or hey, actually, we did overspend here. Reason our payroll staffing benefits was overspent was because we new hires health insurance was 10-20% more than we thought it was.
Mm,
Great, but it's just an easier conversation to have rather than showing people line items, you know, month on month. And, for want of a better word, we lose the concentration of some of our guys as we start to, get too into the weeds of the numbers.
that's great, and good shout out. This helps keep the attention on the information that's critically important for leadership, but maybe sometimes they don't get the details of. So this is a great tool to help keep all the leaders that need to be involved with the conversation engaged. So it's really great.
Perfect. Okay,
I
so
just want
the
to do a
next,
quick reminder:
yeah.
are there any more questions at any point? You're not interrupting. Please put them in the chat or the question function. Again, we'll leave some room, but please put them in. We love to dialogue as much as we can.
Okay, so next, last part of this, part 3, is helping you guys spark lines. So this is another graph that we'll walk through, which is more probably at a CFO level, that will just help you to really understand your numbers well, but also present these information well. So for example, let's take a look at, this is kind of a mock-up I've done, but just helps you understand what this looks like. So the spark lines sit here. Now, for example, we have both a spark line, which is a line graph here, but you can also do a column graph depending on how you like to visually look at numbers. The great thing about a line spark line is that based on this information, you can do it obviously for a whole year, build out your projections as far as you want. But the top red dot is the highest number within that trend. And then the red dot at the bottom is the lowest in that trend. And it's great because if I'm just looking at this trend here really quickly, if I just look at left, I go attendance. Okay, without looking at the numbers, wow, that's interesting. Our first month attendance was great. And then since then, following month was our lowest, and we've kind of picked up a bit. Our contributions as total revenue that we've received started that month here. Wow, the second month in May we peaked, but in June we've come right down straight away. Great insight. Hey, need to do XYZ, talk to the team. What does this look like? Do we need to do any budget cuts? What decisions do we make really quickly? New givers, again, great insight here. So for example, 93, 90, 90 is numbers, but quick little visual representation. Wow, that was flat for the last 2 months. Okay, so what have we done? How are we engaging our givers? And again, just all the details here. These are key metrics that we like to track with churches around new givers, reoccurring givers, total givers that help us really understand the giving profiles. And again, these spark lines give you really great insight into that. So just again, some high level thoughts around this. So you know the sparkline, it's a very small um, representation within either your Google Sheets or Google Doc, so you can easily do that here. But visually, it is very powerful. So it's tiny word size charts that sit within a cell or beside a text, and I've put them here, but you guys might decide you could put it after each month if you want. You can do any number of things, but it's just brilliant visualization. So some useful trends, we talked about revenue growth, understanding your donation patterns, attendance and engagement, how that fluctuates, but also how that reflects with your revenue. So it's giving you some really great, I would say, quick capture moments or visual cues, for want of a better word. Just some additional insights. So compact and contextual. So spark lines, obviously, they fit within that. embedded and they're right there where the data lives, which is why I like them so much. We use this a lot because when you are presenting reports, and again, we'll use the at a board level, executive level, or your leadership level, is that you want to have one document, one PDF. There's, we're not flicking in between 400 pages to try and find the information. It's very clear, very succinct, and this might be become part of your Monday reporting after that, or at month end. Quick high level trends, the minimalist design. I think all this is pretty. I think it's probably. Let's open it up more to questions. But I just wanted to give you that concept and best practices. So use spark lines for patterns. Comparison. Keep them consistent. Obviously the style and the sizing within that format is really clear. Avoid the clutter, so don't get too excited and put multiple spark lines in multiple rows across multiple different cells. Just keep it really simple, and obviously, label them appropriately. So I'll take it back here while we talk through this, Mark, if you got any other
Yeah,
additional
yeah. I
thoughts.
mean, first off, we all feel sparked right now.
Yeah.
The spark and I guess I'll just bring this up big picture, and I'd love to, again, if there's questions before we wrap up today, and be thoughtful of everybody's time. I think what this information goes to, what you shared at the very beginning, is how can we be clear, how can we be transparent, how can we tell stories, and how can we make vision clear also in our reporting. And the more we are thoughtful about that, the more we build trust with people, who makes them want to continue to be part of what we're doing, part of what we're building in church, or our nonprofit. So I think these tools have been extremely helpful. I see a few people typing right now, but just would love to open it up if you've got a quick question that we'd love to answer, and I think could be helpful for others that are here also. And after that, we will wrap up here in a few minutes. Mike, my first question is, how is your summer looking with your kids? What are some of your top highlights with the summer activities, as we're getting questions coming in?
Good. Yeah. So, well, we just moved to Vacaville. So we're in Vacaville, California, and that's been a lot of fun. Moving with kids is both eventful and fun and wild at the same time. So we had the 53-foot because we moved from New York on the east coast to the west coast. We had the 53-foot semi roll up on Friday, and I
Oh,
think a
that's
lot
a
of the
big deal.
neighbors. Yeah, I mean, like obviously a lot of our stuff is not filled in that, but all the neighbors came out, and you could just tell they were like, "What are these guys doing?" So we had a lot of fun with the neighbors, showing them all our different things. But the girls are doing great; they love it. Ice cream has been a big hit. Bowling has been a big hit. 10-pin bowling, and the trampoline park. All of those areas have been great.
Okay,
So yeah,
so we're going to create a spark line for the ice cream, bowling,
yep,
and trampoline parks, and then we will cross
uh-huh,
compare them this time next year and see the
yep,
growth. And I'm just
yep.
messing around.
No, 100%.
It's
Yeah,
awesome.
no, that's great.
It's so
Yeah.
good. Again,
Um,
I'm gonna wait a
so
few more minutes because I see some people typing, so I want to make sure we get to your questions. Um,
yeah.
what are two takeaways from being somebody who just moved? What advice would you give for somebody who's moving forward?
Yeah, I think it's like that old saying, you underestimate the time it takes and then overestimate what you can do. So it's like we thought we could move well and we planned it well, but then trying to execute the plan with two kids and do it well was just blew my mind. So I think if you're going to move, spend more time planning it and just be aware that, like a 6-month move will probably take 12 months. So yeah.
That's awesome. And,
Um,
and apply that to
yeah.
your real life. Yeah, Nathan
Yes,
just came
100%.
in talking about graphs, whether it be moving or church finances. Which graphs are most successful in congregationally facing communication, and what ways in which it has inspired more generosity?
Yeah, that's great. So I think looking at this waterfall graph, I think for a congregation, this would be a little confusing for them until you introduce it to them first in either an annual report or a generosity report or a giving report or an email. And once you've got that that information in front of them, then I think you can introduce this. For the congregation generally, I would include more high level numbers. So just talking about, so if it's a graph, I would probably do more of a pie chart or some of the visuals we've looked at with those bars that would help. So when we presented our church finances, we used a combination of both. And then we also did the follow up with them as well. So this is what we did on Sunday. This is the numbers we presented. Here's a follow up email to show you what you may have seen or missed. And then we would include an FAQ, which I think is really important with generosity. The FAQ provides really great insights into how decisions are made, how the board is represented, who is on the board, how budgets and decisions are made, and then if there's any additional insight that you would have around the governance of the church
That's
and
great.
the bylaws. So if you have an external accountant, CPA, you have audits, who that is, what that looks like, and all of that, as kind of boring as it sounds in terms of like the application of it, actually inspired more generosity, because to the point we've been talking about trust and transparency, people suddenly were like, I don't have to ask for this. The information is readily available, and I can trust this decision making now because I can see how all of this fits together. And for us, that really set us on a trajectory of exponential giving, which was amazing because we stepped over that threshold.
That's really good. We've had a few more questions come in. First, I want to bring up Steve's question. As we're doing that, Mike, I wonder if you can go first to the Orchard Group Church Plants visual, because I do think answering Nathan's question, just showing that example again of storytelling and visual first that has graphs built into it, is really important for communication. And then you can follow up with more of the detailed graphs for people to dig in deeper. But a high level first glance look is really important for inspiring generosity. And really what you're doing is you're building trust, which causes people to step out in that space. So I'll just add that to your response. Steve asked, hey, they're having their annual summit, which kicks off with a banquet. How important it would be to have a special meeting with top tier givers before the general public banquet. And where with growth and ask is given. I'll respond quickly first. I think the word important, I think it's more, I think rather than say how important is it, I'd more say how strategic could it be? Yes, it could be very strategic. There's many ways that you can communicate with the givers at large, but I think it's really strategic with people that the Bible says has the gift of giving, and identifying those individuals, communicating to them at a high level, and speaking to them. And then really you can almost share the same information, maybe a little bit more, and then share it with the whole church. Here's the cool thing that happens. If you communicate with those people first, and then you literally ask them, hey, will you be on the front lines? So it's almost less about asking them to give money and more asking them to be a part and be the champions for the vision of the church. Here's what's going to happen. They probably will give financially also, which is great, but it'll be a byproduct of them being an owner of a vision. So then when you announce it to the whole church, you've got people on the front row or filtered out. And let's say you call them kingdom builders. We have kingdom builders, and they're like, hey, man, yeah. You're going to feel that not just the staff is in with the vision, but these influential people in your church are in with the vision, which gives a big lean in. So there would be my response to that first. Mike, is there anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, 100%. Couldn't agree with you more. Yeah. And to the point is, it's the right people in the room at the right seats. So, sometimes we look at our top givers and we might say, Steve, of this event, you've got 100 people that you will be at the banquet. But of those 100 people, there's 20 to 25 people that have the gift of generosity. And they're the people that you want to invite previous to it up front. And always never assume that it's the husband, always, or husband or wife. Always invite both. So both of them need to be in the room. So it's never just one or the other. Decision maker may or not be who you think it is. And then out of that place, you've got to remember all the top givers, kingdom builders, their key driving motivator is relationship. So they have to be invited into these conversations early because their driving motor is relationship. So as long as they understand what it is, who you are, what you're doing, and even the ask as you start to prepare them for that night is really key, because they need that information and that relationship to kick that off. And it could be a simple event, even just a pastors roundtable where yourself, key team are there, and build into it a level of engagement. So it's, hey, we are inviting you to talk about this, but we're also praying for you guys. Some next level thoughts around this anointing idea, where you can pray for people, anoint them, and say, hey guys, we are actually calling you into this as a kingdom builder, but we're also praying and believing for what it is that is part of your life and your family and your business. And this will also go to the next step. And that engagement just is wild, and at that point you can ask people also for additional resources that they have that you may not
Mhm.
necessarily know about, or you could invite them into that conversation.
That's great. We have a few more questions I want to bring up. Um, Lara, I'm not sure if I'm saying your name right, but shared some great questions. And one of them specifically is around how do we tie this to the discipleship journey in the church, and also storytelling around the impact that happens through discipleship that leads to greater generosity. And I do want to just make a quick side note, because she's making a point about how important it is in the church space around obeying the ask that our Savior makes when it comes to that we trust Him with our finances and with the biblical tithe. And I do believe that that's a huge factor that is, as funny as to say, has really changed in the church, because we've moved to more strategic moves, which has been great around fundraising and getting really strategic around different ways that we can raise funds. But really, the way the church has survived and been and thrived through the years has always been on discipleship around generosity. So I do believe that there is a very important critical nature in discipling givers. So, for example, if your church has like a 15% of your attendance giver base, in the business world, if we're only reaching 15% of our opportunity and we're leaving 85%, uh, most business people would be like, we are totally missing it. But in the church, we've kind of settled with that being okay. Like, oh yeah, 15% of people, that's great. That's better than 10%. Well, how can we, through discipleship, teach people biblical truths and financial literacy to help them move? And we do, if you want to, we want to talk more later. We do have a product here at Overflow called Generosity University that is how we can partner with your church in that space too. And it is a very critical way. But to Lara's question, how are ways that you would translate the discipleship growth in graphs and reports, not just giving reports?
Yeah, that's great. So I think that's where you want to really emphasize the use of multimedia storytelling, pictures, videos that complement the data. So because you necessarily can't have a return on investment for that in terms of like a number, but where you can do is the testimonies, the stories, and then that pairs both of them really well together. So for example, we used to do a story every Sunday, a story about someone that either engaged in their walk, started their walk generosity journey, wherever they sat, but getting people used to hearing, seeing, and understanding the impact of what it is that they're making those decisions along that generosity journey was super powerful.
Yeah.
Even panels at, I would invite like kingdom builders, business people to give offering messages, because they will bring a different angle and a different perspective on how to give, what generosity looks like. That is going to inspire people that are starting for the first time, a husband and wife combination, a younger couple, like just bring everyone into the conversation so their voices are heard. But as a giver, I am putting myself in their shoes, and then that's how I start my journey. But also, it inspires me. So, for me personally, when I hear a kingdom builder speak about generosity that is above and beyond the tithe, and even when I was first introduced to the concept of reverse tithing, which is giving 90% and living off 10%, and what that actually means, I mean, like that just took me to a whole nother level when I was
Mind
thinking
blowing.
about my own generosity, my own giving, and to start like even bringing that concept into the conversation of like, hey guys, it's not even just about 10%. It's about your life, what it looks like, discipleship. And hey, this is an example of a business person, and they may or may not share numbers, but they give above and beyond that. And the reason they do that is because of their revelation here. And once all of that intertwines with the numbers, people start to get very, very comfortable, confident, and they can also see the path that they're going to take personally. I mean, like, I've loved the fact that I've been seeing these guys give at that level, because it's encouraged me far beyond my concept of what tithing was, say 5, 6, 7 years ago. But I was only moved that way because I saw this and saw
Mm,
the application and their lives and what it looked like. And I think that pairing is just like really, really
so good.
powerful.
Along the same theme, our final question with our time, Kyle asked, what would you say are the most underrated pieces of data metrics when representing generosity reports that may not seem obvious to include, but have been super helpful or effective in spurring on more generosity or providing helpful context to financial figures? So, like, yeah, what are some underrated metrics and data that's been productive to share?
Yeah, so I think, a lot of churches rely on that like dollar per head. So it's like, hey, here's our attendance. This is what we total received, and this is, average of say $30 per head for that. I think it's really important to uh, take it a little bit into your context of where you are and look at your median average annual income. So let's say, for example, you're in a city and the average is $60,000. That you go on Google, you search it, so you understand that everyone in your church average is around $60,000. Now take that $60,000, 10% of that would be 6,000. Actually, let's just do easy maths. Say it's 52,000. 10% is 5,200. So you would know that your giving baseline should be around $5,200 for each of those individuals. Now, what that does is that gives you a really great metric, which I think is very underrated, because we're kind of flying blind. We're like, hey, we've got students, we've got adults, we've got, all these different demographics, but that gives you a starting point for your generosity decisions. So, hey, we know that every adult has the capacity to give $5,200 per year, $100 per week. And out of that, then I would use that metric to start benchmarking how our giving is going, and then use that to report to the church. So, hey guys, not necessarily that number, but it gives you an insight into, hey, if we have 500 people attending on a Sunday, 10% of them, 50 people, for example, are engaging in active tithing or reoccurring giving. They should be giving this amount. And that, I think, is really powerful, because it then gives you insight into your congregation's level of income. And then out of that, you can tailor specific messages to all those different people at those different points. Um, Sorry, that's sort of a roundabout way. Sorry, that's try and clarify that a bit more. Does that make sense in terms of like how to understand your numbers better, rather than just taking a stab at like, we should be getting this and it's $30 a head? You really need to understand exactly who your profile is in your city and what their average annual income is.
I love what you're saying, Mike. As we wrap up, is it's like what they say in business? What's the ICP, the ideal customer profile? And so painting a picture, and that goes back to the storytelling. So you can have data around that, and you can also storytell around that, around who the individual is in your church that you're reaching and what's happening in them. And then as we reach more of them, those are the types of impact we're having. So there is so much that can dig into here. We are so grateful that you chose to spend an hour on your summer end of July Wednesday with us. We'd love to answer any more questions. We are 1,000% available. Our team at Overflow, Mike and I, don't hesitate to reach out. And we'll be back soon enough. So thank you guys so much for joining.
Yeah. Thank you guys. Have a great day.